One of the things that can happen when you regularly use the Ho'oponopono practice of saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, is that it can liberate you from your preconceptions. What do I mean by that? We all have certain expectations about our lives, which can operate both at an everyday conscious level and in the realm of the unconscious. These expectations tend to be self-fulfilling prophecies. We all know people who can sabotage themselves just through their belief that nothing good can happen to them. They convince themselves they're going to fail, so they do. We also know that mentally rehearsing success can have really positive benefits. A lot of golfers know the value of visualizing themselves producing the perfect swing and imagining a well-struck ball landing right beside the pin. It's like seeing yourself getting it right opens up the neural pathway that allows you to translate the thought into physical action. But we also know that our expectations have an effect not just on ourselves, but also on the people around us. There's a well-established principle in education that students tend to perform more or less successfully in accordance with their teachers' expectations. Now, these expectations of success and failure operate at different levels of consciousness. And even if we can be brutally honest with ourselves about the beliefs and motivations that drive us, we're still probably only going to manage to scratch the surface. So, in my case, I'm prepared to consciously concede certain things to myself. I'm timid when it comes to taking what I want for myself. I get resentful about money, and I get triggered by other people's attitudes to it. And I have an overly developed irrational fear of losing the people I love. So, all pretty standard stuff. Noticing those things about myself doesn't require any great degree of self-awareness. But then I'm also vaguely aware that there are some critters lurking just below the surface of my conscious mind, which I prefer not to look at, but which still make their presence felt from time to time in ways that make me less than comfortable. I try not to look at those. And then, no doubt, there are whole realms of mental phenomena that I have no conscious awareness of, but still affect the way I think and live my life. Makes me think of Dante's 9 levels of hell. Perhaps those kinds of mythologies are analogies for the levels of consciousness that we all carry within ourselves. So, how does Ho'oponopono relate to all this? How do the phrases, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, operate at both the conscious and unconscious levels to free us from those preconceptions? And if we're talking about the unconscious, how can we even know what effect it's having? Speaking from my own experience, the change I notice after using the practice regularly over an extended period is a growing sense of non-attachment. I notice that I engage with things that would once have really irritated me with a little more distance, maybe from a wider perspective. I can still see the workings of the conflict machine, but I'm not getting dragged into it. In my relationships with people, I notice that I am less reactive and more receptive. In dealing with the pressures of work, I'm more methodical and less inclined to be rattled by them. And probably most importantly, in the judgments I make of myself, I'm less inclined to punish myself and more willing simply to observe. And those 3 differences, I would suggest, are plausible elements of a definition of happiness. The purpose of this channel is to look at strategies for well-being, life hacks that can bring us greater degrees of satisfaction, peace, and happiness. If that's something that you think could be useful for you, please subscribe, and I'll talk to you again soon.